Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett went from hero to villain overnight. And it all started with a shocking attack. In January of 2019, Jussie Smollett called the police with a stunning claim. According to Jussie, he was viciously attacked while walking on the street.
The attacker punches me right in the face.
He claimed that two masked individuals approached him around 2 a.m.
Fighting. There was a second person involved who was kicking me in my back.
And that they poured an unknown chemical on him. After that, Jussie alleges that the two men wrapped a rope around his neck. He went to the hospital after the incident, and police sent to investigate reported that the actor was doing well. As the police gained more information, however, their attention turned to a shocking prime suspect. The police began to grow suspicious of Jussie after he refused to hand over his phone in the aftermath of the attack. The authorities wanted to use the phone's records to confirm details regarding the attack, but Jussie refused, claiming that he didn't want to share personal information. He would later share this information, but only in a document with several items redacted or outright removed. Law enforcement also discovered CCTV footage of the two men behind the attack, which allowed them to rapidly close in. By February of 2019, the two men who allegedly assaulted Jussie were arrested by Chicago police. What they had to say during questioning would stun the world and turn Smollett's case on its head. According to the two men, Jussie had paid them to attack him that night in January. The testimony of the two men, along with numerous inconsistencies in Jussie's version of the events, gave police enough grounds to suspect he was the mastermind behind the hate crime all along. Jussie was charged with filing a false police report, a Class 4 felony, and police contacted his lawyers to negotiate Jussie's voluntary surrender for arrest. In late February, Jussie turned himself into the police and spent the night in jail. Things would continue to get worse for Jussie, though, and the trial would bring even more shocking secrets to light. In February of 2020, new charges of lying to law enforcement were leveled against Jussie. These came after the two men paid to attack Jussie filed a lawsuit against him for defamation, and following the release of body cam footage from police officers the night of the attack. The footage showed Jussie was still wearing the rope around his neck when authorities arrived, which was highly unusual for the victim of a vicious attack. When Jussie continued to deny any wrongdoing, the case went to trial in November of 2021. A month later, in December of 2021, he was found guilty on 5 of 6 counts of disorderly conduct.
This announcement today that Empire actor Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career.
Jussie was sentenced to 150 days of jail time and almost $150,000 in fines. During the final moments of the trial, Jussie again gained media attention when he repeatedly denied any wrongdoing and said, "I'm not suicidal," multiple times while in court.
I am not suicidal.
Jussie spent several months behind bars for staging a hate crime, but was released in March of 2022 after an appeals court voted 2-1 for allowing him to leave jail early. Since his release, Jussie has put out a pop song called "You Got the Wrong One," which refers to his conviction for staging the hate crime in 2019. He also worked with Mona Scott Young on a new film called B-Boy Blues. Whether he can rehabilitate his image and return to stardom remains to be seen. But Jussie will have a lot to answer for if he wants back into Hollywood's good graces. Be sure to stick to the end to see the actress re-sent to prison twice for the same crime. If you thought Jussie's arrest was bananas, wait till you hear this next one. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more amazing prison videos. Felicity Huffman. Felicity Huffman was arrested in March of 2019 when she was caught trying to pay an exam proctor $15,000 to fudge the results on her daughter's entrance exam. Felicity was caught as part of Operation Varsity Blues, a nationwide police investigation of college admissions, bribery, and fraud. She was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, along with 1 count of mail fraud.
The latest on Felicity Huffman. She is reported to prison for her 2-week sentence after quickly pleading guilty in the college admissions scandal.
While Felicity made bail at $250,000, she wouldn't be out of the weeds for very long. In May of 2019, she pleaded guilty to the charges against her And in September of 2019, Felicity was sentenced to 14 days jail time, $30,000 in fines, and over 200 hours of community service. Felicity served her brief jail sentence and was released in October 2019. She is currently out of jail, and her 1-year supervised release period has expired. No news of her going back to acting has emerged. Unlike the actor charged with heinous sexual crimes coming up later in this video, Felicity might have a chance to improve her Hollywood reputation in time. Shelley Malil. Shelley Malil was arrested by law enforcement in August of 2008 in response to shocking crimes committed in San Marcos, California.
Full deliberations are underway for a Hollywood actor who was convicted 7 years ago of repeatedly stabbing an ex-girlfriend, nearly killing her.
Shelley had stabbed Kendra Beebe, his ex-girlfriend.
This is a dangerous, violent man.
The day after this vicious attack, authorities apprehended Shelley as he got off a train in the nearby city of Oceanside. In September of 2010, he was convicted for assault and attempted murder. As part of the verdict, Shelley would serve a life sentence in prison, with a chance for parole after 12 years. However, in September of 2018, Shelley was released ahead of schedule. Unlike the actor coming up, who was charged with second-degree murder and is still working, Shelley has been laying low in a halfway house as of 2022 and claims to be rehabilitating by joining an Alcoholics Anonymous group. Robert Hughes. Robert Hughes may have had a long and successful career, but it all fell apart when he was arrested in August of 2012. Robert was accused of committing indecent actions with a minor, and numerous witnesses had come forward claiming that he had also engaged in perverse behavior on the sets of various TV shows in the 80s and 90s. Following his extradition to Australia for a trial, Robert was found guilty in April of 2014. The jury charged him with 2 counts of sexual assault and 7 of indecent assault. While some of the charges were dropped because the jury couldn't reach a verdict, the remaining charges were enough to put him behind bars for a long time. He was sentenced to just over 10 years in prison, with at least 6 years before being allowed parole. When Robert sought parole in March of 2020, his earliest possible date, it was rejected. Parole was granted, however, 2 years later in June 2022. Robert walked out of jail a free man in the middle of June, though he still remains unpopular with the general public. Robert has declined interviews and is trying to keep a low profile, and he's returned to the UK to live out the remainder of his life. Cameron Douglas. Cameron Douglas was arrested in July of 2009 for possession of half a pound of amphetamines. While this carried a 10-year sentence, things got even worse for him when his girlfriend was caught smuggling narcotics to him while he was on house arrest. Cameron was slapped with an additional 5 years for this and ordered to prison in 2010. While behind bars, Cameron was mistreated by other inmates, including having his leg broken. Cameron also struggled with narcotics, failing a urine test in January of 2013. Despite this, he repeatedly made efforts to appeal for a reduced sentence. Naturally, all these appeals were rejected by the circuit courts and Supreme Courts. In August of 2016, Cameron was finally released from jail. He's made a return to acting since then, with roles in The Runner and Wire Room. Cameron claims he's turned his life around, and so far, it looks like he's right. O.J. Simpson. Everyone knows O.J. Simpson for his jaw-dropping murder case in 1994. But did you know where he is now?
One of the most controversial figures in American life is once again heading toward freedom.
After being found not guilty of murdering Nicole Simpson in 1994, O.J. became the subject of multiple lawsuits from her family. In 1997, Nicole's family were awarded over $30 million in wrongful death damages. O.J. decided not to pay, though, and moved to Miami in 2000 to avoid this. While O.J. managed to dodge some of the liability payments, additional trials and charges eventually piled up against him. O.J. was forced to sell some of his trophies to pay the damages, and he even defaulted on one of his mortgages. O.J. needed another way to pay the damages, and he had a shocking plan. To pay off the liability damages, O.J. decided to release an autobiographical book detailing the murders. The book described what happened on the night Nicole Simpson passed away, providing a shocking level of detail. While this might sound incriminating, O.J. spoke in hypotheticals to avoid legal issues.
And you write in the book, now picture this and keep in mind that this is
purely
hypothetical.
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 Yes.
He was also immune from being tried a second time in accordance with double jeopardy laws, which means you can't be charged for the same crime if you were found not guilty in the past. In the end, O.J.'s book would sell a hefty number of copies, but he never got to enjoy any of the profits. In September of 2007, O.J. was arrested for trying to rob a hotel casino guest that had collector's items with a group of accomplices. While he claimed the items originally belonged to him, many weren't sympathetic to O.J.'s story. O.J. pleaded not guilty to the charges, but in October of 2008, the jury found him guilty on all counts. O.J. was sentenced to 33 years of jail time, with a possibility of parole after just 9. In the end, O.J. waited out his sentence and got parole in October of 2017. In December of 2021, O.J. was released from parole and he is now a free man. According to his social media posts, he enjoys playing golf and uses Twitter to give his opinions on sports and politics. Lilo Brancato was arrested for second-degree murder in December of 2005 after a robbery gone wrong.
But his career came to a screeching halt one night when he was involved in a crime that ended with a police officer dead.
While Lilo seemed on track for a life sentence, in a stunning move at his 2008 trial, the jury declared him not guilty for murder. Despite this, the jury still found him guilty of first-degree attempted burglary. While this wouldn't result in a life sentence, Lilo still got 10 years of jail time in January of 2009. Lilo was incarcerated on Rikers Island, New York, and spent his first few years there. Not long after that, he was moved to a facility elsewhere in New York, but it did little to help Lilo's situation. During his prison sentence, he struggled repeatedly with narcotic abuse and even suffered an overdose while behind bars. Lilo recovered from this, though, and in December of 2013 was granted parole and released. As of 2022, Lilo claims he's been sober for 15 years. He's back to acting with roles in The Phone Call and Made in Mexico. Bill Cosby. For a long time, Bill Cosby was known as America's dad, but everything changed when his dark secrets were exposed.
Bill Cosby, once a beloved TV dad, and tonight a judge now determining that he is a sexually violent predator.
Bill had faced accusations of sexual assault and disorderly conduct since the 1960s, but for decades, Hollywood turned a blind eye. During the 2000s, several women alleged that Bill spiked their drinks with an unknown substance, causing them to fall unconscious. What happened after that, the women couldn't remember, but they had reason to believe Bill had taken advantage of them. When these claims were brought to the public, Bill attempted to sweep them under the rug. Most accusers lacked enough evidence to go forward with a criminal trial, and Bill's lawyers paid to keep them silent. Bill's downfall finally began in 2014, though, and it all started with a joke. During a stand-up comedy routine, Hannibal Buress mentioned Bill's numerous past accusations of sexual assault. He claimed that Bill had raped women and encouraged the audience to look up Bill Cosby rape. As people started to search the term, the public quickly realized that Bill had a long and controversial history of mistreating women. Following Hannibal's comments, a wave of media backlash erupted against Bill, and numerous additional women came forward with their own stories. All of this led to a widely publicized court trial where Bill's fate and freedom hung in the balance. While Bill faced multiple accusations, most of them were from alleged incidents that happened a very long time ago. This meant that they fell outside the statute of limitations. This was good news for Bill, since those charges couldn't be pursued in a court of law. However, 33 of the victims' alleged incidents were recent enough that Bill could still be on the hook for them. One court case from 2005 also had testimony from Bill where he admitted using narcotics with several women, sometimes without consent. All this led to Bill being found guilty in April of 2018 on 3 different counts of indecent assault. In September of that same year, he was sentenced to between 3 and 10 years of jail time. The story wasn't over yet, though, and his controversial release would be for reasons you'd never expect. In June of 2020, Bill's lawyers appealed the conviction from 2018 on indecent assault. They argued that the trial had involved numerous witnesses and documents that didn't relate to the specific woman accusing him in that case. Furthermore, they mentioned how the women accusing Bill in 2018 had been part of a case in 2005, which was settled. In fact, Bill's testimony admitting to using narcotics was only given after prosecutors promised him legal immunity for anything he said. This meant that using the testimony in the 2018 trial was a violation of Bill's constitutional rights, and his lawyers argued the guilty verdict should be overturned. In June of 2021, the Supreme Court for the state of Pennsylvania agreed with Bill's lawyers. The guilty verdict from the 2018 case was overturned, and the celebrity actor was released from jail. Bill enjoyed a brief time at a prison, which he spent relaxing at home and giving interviews to the media about his time behind bars. Unfortunately for Bill, he wouldn't enjoy freedom for very long. After another woman accused Bill of sexual assault, he was dragged back into court for yet another trial in June 2022. This time, he wasn't so lucky, and a jury found him guilty. Bill Cosby is currently fighting a losing battle to regain his status as America's dad, but his worried wife, Camille, is desperately trying to keep him out of the spotlight and inside their remote Massachusetts home. Lori Loughlin. Lori Loughlin was arrested in March of 2019 as part of a huge college admissions bribery scandal.
They were charged with conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud.
Lori had attempted to bribe proctors for college entrance exams in order to help her children get into elite universities, which was uncovered by a sweeping police investigation. In May of 2020, Lori pleaded guilty to one charge of conspiracy to commit fraud and was sentenced to 2 months of prison time. She was also forced to perform 100 hours of community service and pay a fine of $150,000. In the end, Lori was released in December of 2020. Since then, she's been the subject of a lawsuit by Stanford graduates who claim her actions have tarnished the college's brand and devalued their degrees. Sanjay Dutt. Sanjay Dutt was arrested in April of 1993 over illegal possession of firearms in relation to a series of bombings in the Bombay region of India. While Sanjay was cleared of any involvement in the bombings, he was still on the hook for illegally possessing several firearms. This resulted in Sanjay being sentenced to 6 years of jail time in July of 2007. Although Sanjay appealed the ruling, his appeal was rejected in March of 2013. Despite this, the courts did agree to lessen the sentence from 6 years down to 5. During 2007, Sanjay was in and out of jail numerous times as he appealed the verdict, made bail, and then faced rejection on each appeal. By the time his appeal was finally rejected for good in March of 2013, he had only served a year and a half of his full sentence. Sanjay surrendered to authorities in May of 2013 and spent the remainder of his sentence behind bars. In February of 2016, Sanjay was released from prison after completing his sentence. Since then, he's jumped right back into acting, with roles in Shamshera and KGF Chapter 2. Hengama Ghaziani. Hengama Ghaziani was arrested and released from jail all in the span of a month, and it all started with a series of provocative protests. Hengama was arrested in November of 2022 when she made posts on social media opposing the hijab. At the time, she was an actress and translator in Iran, which was known for enforcing a strict dress code on women. This dress code included the hijab, which is a traditional religious head covering. However, Hengama and others opposed to being forced to wear the hijab. They chose to openly condemn the government after an Iranian woman was attacked by law enforcement for wearing her hijab improperly. The attack led to the woman losing her life, which sparked additional outrage on the streets and on social media. Since the protests began, hundreds of women have been arrested by the Iranian government. One of these women was Hengama, who was seized in November of 2022 after she removed her headscarf on social media. She said, "I am with Iranian people until my last breath," in her final post before being taken into police custody. After spending a few days behind bars, Hengama was released on bail in late November. She remains a public opponent of the Iranian government, and her future is uncertain. Amy LOCANE. Amy LOCANE exploded onto national headlines when she became one of the only people in the world to be arrested for the same crime twice. In June of 2010, Amy was involved in a fatal car accident in New Jersey. According to court documents, Amy was driving at over 50 miles per hour in a 35 miles per hour area. When Fred Seaman made a left turn in front of Amy, she couldn't stop in time. Amy's car crashed into Fred's, and during the collision, Fred's wife Helen lost her life. When police arrived to investigate the crash scene, they found out that Amy had a blood alcohol level of nearly triple the legal limit. This led to her arrest and subsequent 2013 sentencing to 3 years of jail time for assault by automobile and aggravated manslaughter. In June of 2015, Amy was released ahead of schedule on parole. While her crime normally carried a sentence of numerous years of incarceration, Amy's lawyers had successfully argued for drastically reduced jail time by bringing up the welfare of her young children. This argument became dubious when Amy's husband divorced her right after she was released from jail, and he took full custody of the kids. Many now believed Amy's lenient sentence was a mistake, and in July of 2016, an appeals court decided to review the previous 3-year sentence. In February of 2019, the appeals court subsequently sentenced Amy to 5 more years of jail time, which she challenged while out on bail. The case advanced to the New Jersey Supreme Court, where their final decision shocked everyone. In July of 2020, the appeals court rejected Amy's argument against resentencing and recommended additional jail time. Amy had no choice but to appeal the decision to the New Jersey Supreme Court. In September of 2020, they sentenced Amy to another 8 years of jail time after agreeing that her initial sentence was too light. She'll have to serve at least 6 more years before being eligible for parole. Click here to see actors and actresses currently rotting in jail and the reasons why. See you there.